My son and his wife turned me into their housemaid, and threw me to the basement. 3 days later, they came begging. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more inspiring African tales. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me continue sharing stories that touch hearts and change lives. Thank you so much. My name is Roseline James. I am 65 years old. I lived in Ohio all my life. I buried my husband Kevin just 3 years ago. After that I thought my world had ended. The loneliness in that empty house was heavy. Kevin had been my partner for 45 years. When he gone, silence felt like punishment. That my son, William, and his wife, Angela, approached me. They saw my struggle, the emptiness of the house, and in their own way, they tried to help. Mom, William said, his voice laced with concern, you can't stay here all alone. It's too much for you. Why don't you come live with us? Angela nodded, offering a tight, almost practiced smile. Yes, Rosaline, it would be so much better. The children would love having you around, and you wouldn't be by yourself. They had 2 young children, little bundles of energy named Lily and Tom. The idea, at first, felt like a lifeline. A way out of the silence, a return to some semblance of family life. I imagined noisy dinners, grandchildren's laughter filling the halls, the comforting chaos that comes with a bustling household. It sounded wonderful, a balm for my aching heart. I thought of all the stories I could tell Lily and Tom, the cookies I could bake, the gardens we could tend together. The thought of once again being surrounded by life, by the vibrancy of youth, was incredibly appealing. I envisioned a second chapter, a new beginning where I could pour my love and wisdom into my son's family. It felt like a natural progression, the way families support each other. So, with a hopeful heart, and perhaps a touch of desperation to escape the haunting quiet, I agreed. I packed my most cherished belongings, the things that truly mattered, and left the home Kevin and I had built together. I believed I was moving towards warmth and companionship, towards a new family dynamic where I would be cherished and included. Oh, how wrong I was. The reality, as it often does, painted a very different picture. The price of their offer, unspoken and insidious, was far higher than I could have ever imagined. It was a price that would chip away at my spirit, bit by bit, until I barely recognized the woman looking back at me in the mirror. I moved in, full of hope, eager to contribute and be a part of their family. But it didn't take long for the subtle shifts to begin. Angela, bless her heart, had a very clear idea of how things should run. And my role, it seemed, was to slot neatly into her carefully constructed domestic order. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, I went from being a cherished mother and grandmother to the housemaid. I'd wake up before anyone else, tasked with preparing breakfast. Oh, Rosaline. The resentment festered, a quiet, insistent whisper in the back of my mind. It was a feeling I wasn't used to, a bitterness that felt alien to my usually sunny disposition. I had always been the one to find the silver lining, to look for the good in people. But now, it was becoming increasingly difficult. Every time Angela asked me to just quickly whip up another meal, or William casually handed me a stack of dirty clothes with a, "Mom, could you?" That whisper grew louder. It wasn't just about the work anymore, it was about the lack of respect, the erasure of my identity. I was Rosaline, a woman who had raised a family, managed a home, grieved a profound loss. I had opinions, experiences, a lifetime of stories. But in this house, I was simply the help. I started to withdraw. My natural inclination to chat and engage lessened. I would find excuses to be in my room, a small space that felt like the only place I could truly be myself. I'd read, listen to music, or simply sit in silence, trying to reclaim some shred of my own identity. The grandchildren, Lily and Tom, were caught in the middle. They loved me, I knew that, but their interactions with me were increasingly transactional. "Grandma, can you get me a snack?" Grandma, will you help me with this game? Never just, Grandma, tell me a story. The warmth of those potential moments was overshadowed by the functional role I played. I found myself watching other elderly people in the park, enjoying their retirement, laughing with friends, pursuing hobbies. A pang of envy, sharp and unexpected, would strike me. This wasn't the retirement I had envisioned. This wasn't the golden age I had looked forward to with Kevin. This was an endless cycle of servitude, a slow draining of my energy and spirit. The anger was no longer just a whisper, it was a low hum, a constant companion, urging me to do something, anything, to break free from this suffocating routine. But what? Where would I go? What could I do? These questions loomed large, daunting and overwhelming. Stories and wisdom to share, but as the handy person who was always there to do things for them. The joy I had anticipated, the companionship, slowly withered under the weight of these unspoken expectations. I was living in my son's house, but it felt like I was working in someone else's. The home that was meant to offer solace became another kind of cage, a gilded one, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. The echo of silence from my own home was replaced by the clatter of tasks, and yet, I still felt profoundly alone. So good with stains. The cleaning of the house, the tidying, the running of errands. My days became a never-ending cycle of tasks. Did you remember to pick up Lily from school? Rosaline, the grocery list is on the counter, could you pop out? I found myself cooking, cleaning, child-minding, and all with a smile, because I truly wanted to be helpful, to earn my keep, to show my gratitude. But the gratitude, it seemed, was only expected from me. There were no thank yous for the sparkling floors, no appreciation for the perfectly folded laundry, no recognition for the delicious meals. It was simply expected. My opinions were rarely sought, my advice even less so. I was there to serve, to facilitate their lives, to be an invisible, ever-present helper. The children, sweet as they were, started to see me as the one who brought them snacks, who helped them with their homework, who cleaned up their spills. Not as their grandmother, with stories and wasn't just the physical labor, it was the emotional toll. I felt my spirit dimming. The vibrant Rosaline, the woman Kevin had loved and cherished, was slowly fading, replaced by a weary, quiet version of myself. I tried to talk to William, gently at first. William, I was wondering if maybe we could share some of the chores. I ventured one evening, hoping for understanding. He looked up from his phone, a puzzled expression on his face. Mom, what do you mean? Angela has her hands full with the kids and work, and you're so good at this kind of stuff. We appreciate you so much. The words were meant to be reassuring, I'm sure, but they felt like a dismissal. Angela, ever perceptive, would chime in with, Rosaline, you're practically a lifesaver. I don't know what we'd do without you. It's so lovely having you here to help out. It was always, help out, never, be a part of. It was never, what would you like to do today, Mom? Or, is there anything we can do for you? It was always about what I could do for them. My feelings, my desires, my needs, were simply not on the radar. I found myself biting my tongue, swallowing my words, because every attempt to express my discomfort was met with a wall of polite deflection or, worse, made me feel ungrateful. After all, they had given me a roof over my head, hadn't they? They had taken me in when I was alone. Surely, I shouldn't complain. This internal monologue became my constant companion, a nagging voice telling me to just be quiet, to just accept my lot. But the resentment, a tiny, insidious seed, began to sprout. I saw Angela relaxing after work, chatting on the phone, while I was still clearing the dinner table, scrubbing pots. I saw William absorbed in his hobbies, while I was folding his laundry. The imbalance was stark, and it chipped away at my self-worth, piece by painful piece. I started to resent the tasks, resent the unspoken demands, resent the loss of my own autonomy. The house I lived in felt less like a home and more like an obligation. And the angry that started to simmer within me wasn't just at them, it was at myself for allowing this to happen. One saving grace, one tiny flicker of light in the growing dimness, was my own financial independence. Kevin and I had always been meticulous about our finances. We had our savings, a modest but comfortable sum, and I had my own pension. This money, my money, was something they couldn't control, couldn't take away. It was a tangible link to my past, to the life Kevin and I had built, and it was a quiet source of strength. I used it carefully, purposefully. I bought myself little things, a new book, a special tea, a piece of clothing that made me feel good. These weren't extravagant purchases, but they were my purchases, made without permission, without explanation. They were acts of defiance, rebellions against the erosion of my autonomy. I also started to use my money to treat myself to small escapes. A solo trip to the local botanical garden, where I could walk among the flowers and breathe in the fresh air, away from the demanding voices. A quiet afternoon at a cafe, sipping coffee and simply watching the world go by, without a task list weighing on my mind. These moments, stolen pockets of peace, were vital. They reminded me that I was still Rosaline, a woman capable of making her own choices, of enjoying her own company. The money wasn't just currency, it was a symbol of my lingering independence, a quiet reminder that I still had agency, even if it felt like it was constantly being chipped away in other aspects of my life. It was a whisper of hope, a thought that perhaps, just perhaps, this wasn't the end of my story. Perhaps there was a way to reclaim my life, to once again stand on my own 2 feet, not just financially, but in every sense of the word. The small escapes, the quiet moments of independence, weren't enough to quell the growing dissatisfaction, but they planted a seed. A seed of desire for connection, for genuine companionship that didn't come with a hidden price tag. I started to look for opportunities, small ways to connect with people outside of William and Angela's orbit. I saw a flyer at the local community center, Wise Women's Circle, a place for sharing, support, and friendship. Wise Women's Circle. The words resonated with me. I wasn't just a housemaid, I was a wise woman. I tentatively made my way to the first meeting. I remember feeling a knot of anxiety in my stomach. What if I didn't fit in? What if they were all much younger, or much older, or simply different? But as I stepped into the room, I was met with warm smiles and genuine welcomes. There were women of all ages, some older than me, some a little younger, all with stories etched onto their faces. We shared tea, biscuits, and hesitant conversations that slowly blossomed into meaningful exchanges. There was Eleanor, a feisty woman in her late 70s who had traveled the world after her husband passed. There was Margaret, a gentle soul who had started a small online business in her 60s. And there was Sarah, a retired teacher with a wicked sense of humor. They listened when I spoke, truly listened, without judgment or interruption. They offered advice, shared their own experiences, and most importantly, they saw me. They saw Rosaline, not just someone's mother or grandmother, not just someone's housemaid. They saw a woman with a mind, a heart, and a spirit that was yearning to be seen and heard. These gatherings became my sanctuary, my weekly dose of authentic connection. They reminded me of the world beyond William and Angela's house, a world where I had a voice, where I was valued for who I was, not for what I could do. The whispers of resentment started to be accompanied by a growing chorus of empowerment. Women's Circle filled a void in my heart, but it didn't solve my living situation. However, the confidence I gained from these women, their stories of reinvention and resilience, sparked an idea. If they could start businesses, travel the world, find new passions, why couldn't I? The thought of finding a job, after so many years out of the workforce, was daunting. I hadn't worked since William was a small boy. My experience was in homemaking, raising a family, and supporting Kevin's career. What skills did I even have? But then I thought about all the things I did so effortlessly around William and Angela's house, the organizing, the cooking, the meticulous attention to detail. These weren't just chores, they were skills. Valuable skills. Eleanor, from the group, encouraged me. Rosaline, you're a natural organizer. You have impeccable taste. There are so many places that would value your calm demeanor and your experience. She even helped me look for opportunities. We scoured local ads, community boards, and online listings. It was exhilarating, scary, and thrilling all at once. I remember one particular ad. Part-time assistant needed for a local independent bookstore. Must love books and have excellent organizational skills. My heart fluttered. Books. I had always loved to read. The thought of being surrounded by stories, of helping people discover new worlds, was incredibly appealing. I filled out the application, my hands trembling slightly. I went for the interview, dressed in my best clothes, a renewed sense of purpose radiating from me. I talked about my love for literature, my experience managing a household, and my eagerness to learn. And to my absolute delight, I got the job. It was a small, part-time position, just a few days a week, but it was my job. It was a step, a crucial step, towards reclaiming my independence, my identity, and my life. The feeling of earning my own money I had worked for, was profoundly empowering. It wasn't just about the income, it was about the validation, the sense of contributing to something meaningful beyond a never-ending cycle of chores. Starting work at the Literary Nook was like a breath of fresh air. The scent of old books, the quiet hum of conversations about stories, the gentle rustle of turning pages, it was all so wonderfully stimulating. My colleagues were kind and welcoming, appreciating my dedication and my calm efficiency. My boss, Mr. Henderson, a charming and slightly eccentric man with a passion for classic literature, often praised my organizational skills. Rosaline, he'd say, you have a knack for finding order in chaos. This place hasn't looked this good in years. These simple words of acknowledgement were like balm to my soul, a stark contrast to the silence or the expected attitude I received at home. Every paycheck I received felt like a victory. It wasn't just money, it was freedom. It was the tangible proof that I was capable, that I had value, that I could stand on my own 2 feet. I used my earnings thoughtfully. I opened a separate bank account, a freedom fund, as I secretly called it. I bought myself comfortable work shoes, a new, stylish cardigan that made me feel more confident, and even treated myself to a nice lunch once a week. These were not grand gestures, but they were deeply significant to me. They were choices I made, solely for myself, without needing anyone's approval or input. I also started to save, with a new purpose in mind. A Visi place again, a home where I could truly be myself, was a powerful motivator. My energy levels, which had been so depleted, began to rise. I felt a spring in my step, a renewed sense of purpose. I was learning new things, meeting new people, and engaging with the world on my own terms. The taste of this newfound independence was sweet, utterly delicious. It was a taste of Rosaline, reborn and revitalized, and it fueled my determination to keep moving forward. As my confidence grew, so did my ability to set boundaries, albeit subtly at first. I was still living at William and Angela's, but my schedule was now my own. I had work, I had my wise women's circle, and I had my own personal time. This meant I wasn't always available to jump at every request. Rosaline, could you just run to the dry cleaners for me? Angela asked one morning. Oh, I'm so sorry, Angela, I replied, a calm certainty in my voice that surprised even myself. I have to be at the bookstore early today. I won't have time. Angela blinked, momentarily taken aback. She wasn't used to me declining a request. Oh, right. Well, I suppose I'll have to do it then. It was a small victory, but a significant one. The requests didn't stop entirely, but they became less frequent, and I became more adept at gracefully declining them when they interfered with my plans. William and Angela noticed the change, of course. My less available schedule meant they had to pick up more of the slack. Dinner wasn't always magically on the table when they walked in. Laundry sometimes sat in piles a little longer. They started to grumble, subtly at first. "Mom seems to be out quite a lot these days," William commented to Angela one evening, not realizing I was within earshot. Angela sighed. "Yes, well, she's enjoying her little job. But it does mean more for us to do." There was a hint of irritation in her voice, a feeling that I was somehow letting them down. But I refused to let it chip away at my newfound resolve. I wasn't their maid. I was a contributing member of society, a person with her own life and commitments. The dynamic in the house was shifting, slowly but surely. The power balance was no longer entirely in their favor. I was still their mother and mother-in-law, but I was also Rosaline, the bookstore assistant, the member of the wise women's circle, the woman with her own schedule and her own dreams. The sands beneath their feet were shifting, and they were starting to feel the ground move. The shift in dynamics eventually led to the inevitable. The conversation I knew was coming, the one I had both dreaded and, in a strange way, anticipated. It happened one Sunday afternoon, after a slightly tense family lunch where I had, once again, gently declined a request to just quickly organize the children's toys, citing an afternoon commitment with my wise women's circle. William cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. Angela, ever the more direct one, started. "Rosaline," she began, a forced sweetness in her tone, "we need to talk." I braced myself. "Of course, Angela. What's on your mind?" "Well," she continued, "it's just, with you working and all your other commitments now, we've noticed that you're not around as much. And frankly, a lot of the household duties are falling back on us, which is fine, of course, but it wasn't quite what we expected when you moved in." William nodded, adding, "We just thought, it would be a bit more of a help with everything, Mom." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusations. They weren't saying it directly, but the implication was clear. I wasn't fulfilling my duties as their live-in help anymore. My heart ached a little. This wasn't the loving family discussion I had hoped for. This was a business transaction, a performance review of my servitude. But the old Rosaline, the one who would have crumbled under the weight of their unspoken disappointment, was gone. A stronger, more resolute Rosaline sat in her place. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, I spoke my truth, calmly and clearly. "William, Angela," I said, meeting their gaze, "when I moved in, I was grieving, and I was looking for a home, for family. I wanted to contribute, and I did, for a long time. But I also need to live my own life, my own pursuits." I felt my spirit fading. Angela looked genuinely surprised, almost hurt. "Rosaline, we never meant for you to feel that way. We thought you were happy to help." "Helping is one thing," I replied gently, "being taken for granted is another. I needed to find my own path, my own purpose again. And I have." William, usually more reserved, interjected, "Mom, we just thought you were lonely. We wanted to make sure you weren't by yourself." "And I appreciate that, William," I said, my voice softening slightly. "But loneliness isn't cured by replacing one form of isolation with another. I needed connection, respect, and the freedom to be myself. My work at the bookstore and my friends have given me that." The air was thick with unspoken emotions. There was a moment of silence, a tangible shift in the room's energy. It wasn't an easy conversation, and there were no immediate apologies or grand declarations. Changed. My voice, after years of being stifled, was finally heard. It wasn't accusatory. It was simply factual, an honest articulation of my experience. And in that moment, I felt a powerful sense of liberation. I had spoken my truth, and the world hadn't crumbled. In fact, it felt a little clearer, a little brighter. It was the first step towards not just reclaiming my physical space, but reclaiming my emotional and mental space too. But I had found my footing, and I was ready to walk it. The conversation, though difficult, was a turning point. It was clear that while William and Angela might have meant well initially, our expectations of my role in their home were fundamentally incompatible. I loved my son, and I loved my grandchildren, but I couldn't sacrifice my well-being for a facade of family harmony. The thought of moving out, of truly standing on my own again, was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. But the image of my own little place, a sanctuary where I could make my own choices, where the only expectations were my own, had taken root. I started to actively look for a new place. I had my freedom fund, and with my earnings from the literary nook, I knew I could manage an apartment. Eleanor, from the Wise Women's Circle, was an incredible support. She had navigated similar changes in her life and offered practical advice adventure. So dear friends, that brings us to today. My life is far from perfect, but it is rich, fulfilling, and most importantly, it is mine. I found my way through the darkness of grief, through the challenges of living in a situation that diminished me. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more inspiring African tales. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me continue sharing stories that touch hearts and change lives. Until next time, remember, love, faith, and courage. God bless you all. Bye.